Today is Friday, October 22nd, 2021. My name is Katie Stacy, and I'm here with Greg Pendon, and this is a video call to interview him for the Houston Asian American Archive. Thank you for talking with me, Greg. I'm going to start out by asking when and where were you born?
I was born in the Philippines. The town is Pototan, and in the province of Iloilo.
How would you describe that area and the household where you grew up?
The area is about 15 miles away from the coast, and it's really the central part of the province, and it's a farming community with all the what we call the barrios around it. So people are really farmers to begin with.
And do you
and our household that I grew up with, three brothers and two sisters. But in the household, we also have grew up with four cousins. The cousins, because their parents died during the World War II. So my mother, being the only sister of my aunt, took on informally adopted the four siblings. So we grew up together. And so I also grew up with my mother's grandmother. Mother, who was named. That's who I was named after. The name of my grandmother was Gregoria. So I was named after her, and I was the second child. I have an older sister, and then after that, I have the sister, and then the three brothers came along.
Were you close growing up with your siblings?
I'm sorry?
Were you close with your siblings while growing up?
Yes, we were very close. Normal sibling rivalry and things like this, but we get along very well. Everybody had a chore in the house, on the division of labor, who goes to where, and my mother ran a small grocery store, and my father was initially a postman for the town, but later on he became the postmaster of the postal service.
Can you speak more about your parents' occupations?
Yes, like I said, we grew up in the my consciousness about growing up was really started when I think I was 3 years old, and my father started as a delivery for telegram service, and then later on he became a postman, and also at the same time was he learned how to do the telegraph operator, the Morse code, in the old days. And then after the postmaster retired, he became the a postmaster. And like I said, my mother ran a small grocery store, and us kids would help in tending to the store when we're out of school.
What were some of the values that your parents emphasized when you were growing up?
The values that it really is, it's about working hard, and 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 church was really important to my parents. We would do growing up. We would have you have to be home by 6 o'clock, because we had to do the Angelus, and we have to do the prayers and the rosary every night. And it was a happy, the environment, all my friends in the community. It was, like I said, it was fun growing up. We were poor, but I didn't know where.
Do you have any fun memories that you like to think about from your time growing up back home?
Yes, my fondest memory was getting up Sunday morning early, and my grandmother was at the time was getting old, and she needed help in getting to the church. We was only about 3 blocks away from the house, so she would wake me up, and I'd take her to accompany her to church for the early 5 o'clock mass in church. And then my later on, when I was in high school, my father decided to get a traveling rice mill business. So he built he and an uncle built a motorized vehicle, and that's where they put the rice mill. It's a small rice mill, and that's how I learned how to drive the vehicle. At 12 years old, I was able to drive the vehicle.
What were the decisions that led you to move to the US?
I'm sorry?
What were the decisions that led you to move to the United States?
When I came to the United States, I came to the United States in 1964. After when I went to college at Adamson University, I finished my chemical engineering, Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering at Adamson University. I actually started at the University of San Agustin in Iloilo. But after the third, my junior year, my parents decided that I would go to Manila to pursue to finish my degree in chemical engineering at Adamson University. And so when I finished it, I thought I can get a job that was for my degree, chemical engineering, there was no chemical plants, no no industry except for the Shell refinery in the Philippines. So first I applied to, I actually went to Tokyo on a Rotary scholarship to go to pursue a degree in Tokyo Institute of Technology. But before I could do that, when I went to Tokyo, I had to go to a language training course because all the classes are conducted in Japanese and the textbooks were written in text. And after 3 months of going to Japanese language, I know I can handle it. So I went back to the Philippines, and then I started going through. I don't know if you're familiar with the United States Information Service, USIS library in Manila. So I frequented and I went to the library almost every day and was looking for schools that I could apply to. And I actually applied to in California for in Georgia Tech, in Georgia, Texas A&M, and then I applied to, actually I applied to Rice also, but only Caltech and Georgia Tech and Texas A&M replied to my application. And along with the application for admission was also my need for a assistantship. So it's either graduate assistant or teaching assistant. And at that time, my sister was in Houston as a nurse in Houston. And she told me that I can help you. I really could help you if you go to school in Texas. So I went to Texas A&M. And the initial assistantship was in the form of the $200 a month assistantship, teaching assistant or graduate assistant. And so I went to Texas A&M and I would spend my weekend in Houston. Well, on weekdays I would be in College Station for pursuing my master's degree in chemical engineering. And after I had my master's degree, before that, I got married to Lucy, my wife, and so we moved to so I moved her to College Station, and then at the same time the department offered me a National Science Foundation fellowship to pursue my PhD in chemical engineering. It took me 6 years to finish my my PhD, but at the same time, I was raising. My wife and I were raising 3 children in College Station.
I want to just take a minute to ask you, what is it about chemical engineering that made you choose that field of study?
Uh, I think my hearing aid is say that again.
Why did you choose to study chemical engineering?
Did I choose? I choose that was it was in when I started school, chemical engineering in the University of San Agustin. Uh, yeah, what I call my ninong or my godfather, my god baptist in my baptism. He was a graduate of University of San Agustin, and he was the one who encouraged me. I didn't really know when I went to register for chemical engineering at University of San Agustin. I didn't know whether I would. I didn't really know what I had planned for. So he encouraged the take chemical engineering, and I owe it to him and throughout the years when I was at San Agustin, he was encouraging me. And the highlight of my stay in college is that when I went to in my second year at in University of San Agustin, I obtained a full scholarship because of my grades at, in my degree. And then so when I moved to college, to Manila, to Adamson University, I was also given a scholarship because of my high grades in.
Were there any were there any major differences that you noticed going to school in Manila versus College Station?
That really what it's the big difference in well, number one, the quality of instruction in in the Philippines. Most of my all of my instructors were degreed. They have their degrees in chemical engineering, but it's all academic. They didn't really have a technical background on experience in chemical engineering, how to design chemical plant, how to design a process. But in College Station, Texas A&M, my professors were all PhDs and PhDs, and they have the technical background for what they're teaching in at the college. So that's to me that was the biggest. It was an eye opener because they can relate to you. They can relate to you what you're struggling with, what give the guidance on what you should be working on, and that's I think where I developed my initiative to do things that I need to do, and it gave me the foundation for what I did in my career at Dow Chemical.
What kind of defining moments did you have in grad school? Like what kinds of moments of initiative did you have?
In my the I would say it's probably when the head of the department, that was my graduate advisor, came to me one day and she said, Greg, we need I need your help in he was writing a series of technical textbooks in his area of expertise, which is distillation and separations. And so he asked me, I would do said you would do I would do the simulation. That was the time when computer simulation was great. I would do the simulation. I would do he would write the theory and and I would write the computer programs to do what he wanted me to do for his textbook. And so it was, and then being able to and then to write it in technical journals and then make that presentation to present that technical journals to the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, and to see my name on the publications for the chemical engineering progress. It's what I call, they may not be accepted for your technical paper to be accepted by publications in chemical engineering was a defining moment for me. So we know that you're an expert in that area. So
You mentioned that one of these moments was when you needed to write computer code. Had you ever done that before, or was that something that you needed to learn for this project?
That was the first time I did the writing the computer code. Fortran programming was a key punching and then writing. I don't know if you know
What was it like to attend school during this time period in American history in the 60s and the early 70s? Did you face any challenges that you'd like to talk about? Things like that?
I didn't really see a lot of the challenges come and go, and then biggest challenge was to me was just the time that it will take to get the program written correctly, or even punching the doing the key punch cards. The biggest challenge for us is because we have 3 children, and my wife is working, and so we have to divide our time to. We have 3 young children, so I would go to school in the morning, and then at 2 o'clock I would come home and relieve my wife, and my wife would go to work, and I would take care of the children until she comes back again at night at 11 o'clock, and then So I would take care of the children, provide all their needs, and feed them, get them a bath, and put them put them to bed. And so when she comes home at 11 with the things that I haven't finished during the day, I would go back to the college and then finish the work that I haven't done or I haven't finished during the day. So would come home, make it 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then repeat the same thing the next day. So it's a good thing that we live just off campus, and it's only a short walk from to the office.
I want to sort of switch tracks a little bit and talk about your immigration journey and journey to citizenship. You've been open about the period of time being very long and frustrating. How did you feel about having to live with uncertainty year after year as things, moved on?
I think I didn't really worry about being to live with it, the threat of being deported. It was a long journey, but I was not so. I didn't get depressed on whether we should be deported or things like that, because when I went to work, because throughout that journey, I had my company, Dow Chemical, had promised me that whatever happens, we will help you. And so at that time, I had some other options if things didn't go well. But as you know, government changes every year. That change migration laws, and so at that time I didn't really worry about whether I would be deported, or it was difficult. It was very trying times, but we feel like we have the help of a lot of people to overcome our problem, and it came, and in due time it came. The only problem I had with it is biggest challenge is because of my job. I could not because I didn't have the visa to stay. I could not go to the to help service the plants for Dow Chemical in other areas of the world. I could not go to Germany, or I could not go to Spain, or I could not go to the Netherlands because I didn't have the visa. If I leave the US, I could not come back. So I had to wait until 1988 to make my trip to the other parts of Dow Chemicals complexes. Yeah.
Can you speak more about the different types of support and help that you received during this time? You've spoken a little bit about Dow Chemical. Were there any friends and family who also helped you in your journey to citizenship?
You mean about my immigration status, or?
Yes, I'm hoping you could speak more about the different types of support that you received during the immigration process.
Yes. First, like I said, Dow Chemical, and then the community, the lawyers that we have met in in our area in Lake Jackson or West Columbia. They even wrote letters to Congressman. As you know, Ron Paul is from Lake Jackson, and so he at that time he was running for his congressman, and he helped us write letters. And Mr. Davis was also a lawyer in Lake Jackson, help us write all the lawyers to Senator Benson, and to get him to help us with our case. And the person that also helped us, I don't know if Lucy had told you about our foster, what we call our foster parents here in Houston. They also help us in a way that their acquaintances and friends would. They even accompanied us to the courthouse for the hearings. And this particular person, this other person, was was with ESO Corporation, and he was a hiring director for the company, and he came with us and helped us advise and write letters. But it really was with the changes. What really came about was the changes in immigration laws, and then we went through the whole process. But all along the way, these people really helped us. Dow Chemical, first of all, and then the lawyers from Lake Jackson, and Senate Congressman Ron Paul.
Could you tell me more about your foster family? You mentioned them briefly, and I'm just wondering if you can elaborate more on them.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. Could you tell us more about your foster family?
Oh yes. This foster family. I don't know if you told Lucy had told you that she met the Prebles, Neil Preble. She met Neil during when she came to the US in 1964. There was a group of the International Living in Houston, and all these ladies would met these nurses and introduce them to Houston, and then take them out to see Houston. But for some reason, Neil Preble and Lucy clicked, and they got together, and they just fell in love, and Neil Preble. So she came in August, And December, she invited my wife Lucy to go with her to visit their daughter in northern Dallas, and we spent Christmas there. And after that Christmas, every time I would visit Lucy, real people would always be there, and would go out, and then over the years we just did treat each other like, yeah, we're family. See, the husband, we, we call him Gramps, but Rolf was his real name. He was the one who introduced me the football, the national football, because they have the tickets to the Rice game. He was a graduate of SMU, Southern Methodist University. So the Southwest Conference was still there, and then he had tickets to those games, and he would buy the tickets for us and take us to the games at Rice Stadium, and then the old what is this, the Astrodome, and even in Dallas at Texas A&M, and then Dallas would take us to those games. And so when the kids came along, they just decided that they want to be our the kids' grandparents. So every birth, when our kids were born, they would always come. They're the first visitor to the hospital for Lucy, and when the kids were growing up, grandparents they would always want to know when the grandparents day at school is, and they would come, and they're gone now, but they were every Christmas we'd spend Christmas with them, and with them and with their grandchildren. So we're really the what we call the extended family and the second family, and there are American families. So they're always proud to tell their friends that there's our this is our other family. When Gramps passed away in the memorial, we were all treated just like their children, because they were in the memorial. They left behind. Were part of the family that will be remembering them and mourning the Gramps' loss. And then when Nell passed away many years ago, also, Lucy was in charge of the services for Nell. So we really we thought we're our family here in Houston, and it really helped our acclimatization to this country. We were really blessed that we met them. I don't know if it was just our luck or what, but
You've talked a little bit about your wife, Lucy. Would you mind telling me how you two met?
Oh yeah, oh yes, yeah. Well, like I said, my 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 sister was living in Houston, working as a nurse in Houston at the time when I was at A&M. So every weekend I would family ride to the old days. You family ride. I didn't have a car then, but I would family ride from College Station to Houston. You see all those students lining up Highway 6 and Highway 6, family ride to wherever, Dallas or Austin or San Antonio or Houston, and I managed the family ride. I would get a ride to Houston. And that particular day was my birthday. That weekend was my birthday. So I planned a ride and to Houston. When I got my sister's apartment, there was a big note on the door that says, "I'm at work and I won't be in until 11 o'clock. But I have a friend in Park Towers, which is across the other side of the medical center. They said you can walk there, and this is the apartment number. You knock on my friend's door, and she'll take care of you for until I get home at 11 o'clock." So I did. So I walked over to that apartment, Park Towers apartment, and I knocked on the door. And then this young lady, said, yes. I asked her, I said, is Max there? The name of the person that my friend. Oh no, she also went to work, and she went to work, and I'm the only one here in the apartment. So would you come in? So I said, and then we sat there talking, and until it was lucky for me that I didn't know she was at work at that time. So that's the first time that we met. And after that, I think it was Thanksgiving. A friend of ours in 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 College Station, a Filipino couple, also was giving a party for all there were about 20, not that many, but 10 Filipinos in Texas A&M College Station. Most of them were Rockefeller scholars from the Rice Institute in Los Baños in the Philippines, and so she threw a party for us, and she also invited nurses from Houston, and along with this group of nurses, about 6 of them, Lucy was part of it, and so from there we developed a relationship, and then in 1965 we dated until then when I was doing at that time I was doing my research for my master's degree. And that time you have to write your own. You have to find a typist, do the typing, and then so on weekends when I'd go to Houston, Lucy would offer to type my my thesis, and and she did. And so yes, the relationship just developed, and finally in 1966, I I proposed to her and said, so we got married in Houston at the old Houston Cathedral in Houston.
Thank you for sharing that. I really enjoyed hearing it. I'm wondering if you can talk more about what it was like to be going to school and raising a family at the same time. That sounds very difficult to me.
Yeah, it was hard. I can tell you it was hard, but we had fun. We take the kids to camping, visiting my Lucy's foster parents weekends, and then the hardest thing was making ends meet. But I was making $200 a month on an assistantship, and Lucy's making $300 a month at the hospital, and rent and everything else. But we had fun with on weekend. Friday night was we had an old the university has in summertime we had the group, and we had show movies in the campus, and otherwise there's also the drive-in theater, drive-in movies, and it's only $1 per carload. So we count our pennies together. We have $1 here to be able to take the kids, and then that was also the first time we've had pizza. Yeah, pizza, and then the Tex-Mex food was when I learned how to like Tex-Mex and pizza.
What types of Tex-Mex do you like the most?
Oh, I like the taco, the barbecued barbecue taco, yeah, beef taco. I really enjoy that. Yeah.
Do you remember any of the movies that you went to see at the drive-in?
Oh, yeah. Old some were old movies like the Cary Grant, North by Northwest, and the Alamo. They were pet movies. And, yes, and Jerry Lewis movies. I was a fan of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis comedy books. I don't think I missed any of Jerry Lewis's movie when I was growing up. I really enjoy his kind of funny movie.
Thank you. I asked that because I noticed the bushel and a peck sign, and I think that's from the Guys and Dolls musical. And so I had wondered if you guys enjoyed musicals.
Oh,
Okay, I'd like to switch gears again and start talking about your work history. The first thing I'd like to ask is, did you enjoy your teaching assistant job when you were a grad student, or was it, kind of drudgery?
which one is it? Teaching?
Yeah, the teaching assistant job at Texas A&M. Did you enjoy that?
Oh yes, I tremendously. I really like the dynamics that I had with the with the students, and I remember there was only one woman among one girl in that whole class of seniors. I would I teach the unit operations lab, so there was only one girl in that class, and I really enjoyed the teaching, and then the kids looking up to me, and say, what, what should I do now, Greg? And what should I do? What this is, are we doing the right thing? They would write their experiment and with the result and all of this and their observation. I will be correcting, and here, here, very smart kids, and it really makes you feel good when you know that these kids are so smart, but they'll ask your opinion, they'll ask you, are we doing the right thing, this, and that was, to me, that the other benefit that I got from that teaching that class is when I went to work for Dow. When I went to work for Dow, a lot of those the students were working for Dow Chemical, so it was like a transition, and they made it easier for me because they will be assigned other areas of Dow. Dow Chemical is a big complex here in Freeport, about 85 different units of chemical processing. And I was in process engineering. So our role in process engineering is to help the plants, especially in troubleshooting what the problem is. And so this graduates that are working for Dow, it was easy for me because they would just call me and said, hey, Greg, we got a problem here. I know you can help us. So it made my transition from Dow Chemical more easier because of the relationship that I have developed with when I was teaching, and we had a very good relationship when I was teaching. So
can you talk more about your transition into Dow Chemical and the types of work that you did throughout your career?
Okay, when I went to work for Dow, it was more of a and maybe it was an accident already, but I had when I graduated from my PhD degree, all the jobs have dried up. I could not find a job. I could not find a job. The only job that was offered to me at that time was a teaching job in Nova Scotia in Canada. And so it developed. So, but anyway, I had my degree in, I graduated in December. And so from December there on, the in Texas A&M, my boss, the head of the department, said, I'll keep you here as a research assistant, and I would do all the legwork for investigating the models that he proposed in his text, and would write text. So I did, but in April of that year, of 1973, my head of the department said, Dow, I had a call from Dow, and we need help in writing simulation programs for the process, for the hydrocarbon process. Simulation means, to simulate the steady state of the hydrocarbon processing. He said, but I said, that's the work that you're doing here anyway. So I said, I would send you there. You would still be paid from with us, but you would be making a little bit more, like $600 a month. It said. So you would go to A&M, but it would be just for the summer. You said from April until August. So at that time, Lucy and the kids were in Houston. So I said, okay, I will do that. So I went to Dow, and then they hired me as just a contractor. I was a contractor for Dow, but my paycheck comes from Texas A&M. So I worked until August. By the end of by mid-July, I'm committed to this job in Nova Scotia, to be assistant professor in Nova Scotia. But my boss came down to my office and he said, Greg, why don't you stay here with us and work as at Dow Chemical? I said, I can't do that. The school catalog has been printed in Nova Scotia, and my name appears as an instructor for a couple of courses at the Nova Scotia Technical Institute. So I said, maybe I'm not sure I can do that, but I said I'll give it. I'll talk to my wife and see what she thinks. So I did. So I went to talk to Lucy, and Lucy said, okay, you go ahead and go to Nova Scotia. Me and my kids will stay here. I said, I don't think I can stand the cold up there in the north. She said, we can live here. I've got a good job until maybe you can come back after. So I said, oh, So I went back to my boss. I said, okay. So he gave me the papers to fill it up, and then so I started as a process engineer in at Dow. Then we even made big projects, and apparently they like what my projects. So promotions came, and by 1980, 7 years after my career, they promoted me to what they call it, senior process associate, or the point where I'd be responsible for this technology and these plants that I have to help troubleshoot, or if they need help. And after that, I did I was assigned to process engineers for expansion of the plants, like the plants in Tarragona, or plants in Stara, Germany, and also in the Netherlands. So I'll be doing the process engineering work for the project. And then transition, like I said, was really easy, because I had to learn a new type of like process control and all of that, how to design equipment, because all my work previous to that at Texas A&M was just writing codes for the simulation program. So, and I finally developed a through self-study and going with AICHC and all the other resources that were available to me. I developed a specialty in heat transfer. And so a few years later, I became the heat transfer expert for not only for Freeport, but also for what they call global process engineering for Dow Chemical, and that meaning it's all over Dow's facilities in the parts of the world. So and that was fun, because you get to meet with all process engineers and from other countries, and Dow Chemical, and I really enjoyed it. Talk to in Tarragona and Holland was what I thought was one of the best things that I really enjoyed going to. So.
In recent years, there's been an ongoing conversation about discrimination, especially in the workforce. You were just talking about how you became the heat transfer expert. And I was just wondering, did you ever perceive that you were being treated differently than your coworkers, for example, with promotions or getting projects, anything like that?
I'm not sure. Say it again.
Sure, sorry. Did you ever feel like you were being discriminated against in the workplace in terms of getting promotions or projects?
I really, to be truthfully honest, I never felt I never felt that any kind of discrimination. The only time what some people think was discriminatory was before my last big promotion. The my supervisor came to me, or the boss that said, Greg, I think you need to go to I need to go to accent uh, accent improvement course, and it was at and he said, I'll, the department will pay for you to go to this service in at the medical center, and it might take you some time for you to be able to do that, because you have to drive to Houston from here, and the class is at 5 o'clock in the evening. I said, sure, anything, and to me, because I have now I still have my accent, so it was not. Some people would abuse the meaning. Why would it do that to get promoted to go to the accent? What it comes with a job. I have to deal with other people. I have to talk to different nationalities. I have to every day I have to work when people come to my office to consult or need help. I need to be able to communicate to them. So it was, to me, it was a benefit that I did. But that was the only time that I would say that some people it might be discriminatory, but the only another thing that people might think discriminatory is after when I was my first year at Dow, after a couple of months, I think, in the office, the engineers are scattered in the first floor, but the main office, engineering office, is up in the second floor, and so that's where we would pick up our mail and internal mails and all of that, collect and give our mail. And one day, I went up to the office to pick up my mail, and the secretary, what we call this secretary of the boss, said, called me over and said, "Hey, come over. Could you get me my coffee?" I said, "Sure, Melly, no problem." So the coffee room is where the mail also. So I said, "No problem." So I would keep on get the coffee, and that went for about a week. And then finally, following week, I went up there and said, "Craig, I really have to apologize." I said, "Why, Millie?" He said, "Yeah, because I thought you were just a messenger from the mailroom, because my office was at the mailroom, and she thought I was just up there to collect my mail." So I said, my boss told me that. I said, "Hey, that's Dr. Pendon that you just told to get your coffee." So it was a big laugh, and we enjoyed it, and Millie could not stop talking about it. Every time her friends in the community and at the office she would always relate that every time we'd be in the same gathering, the same party, she would tell, let me tell you about my what Greg and I how Greg and I did, met. so it was, but they might think it's discriminatory, but I observed many discriminations from other people, but to me personally, I don't think I've ever experienced any kind of discrimination. I was promoted because I I I did my work. I developed my expertise. So that's I know how to leverage my expertise. So that's how if you call it survive, but that's how and yeah, and my office has an open door, and engineers would come, and at Dow Chemical, when I went to work in 1973, the environment was really different from the environment that we had when I was when later part of my career, because there were no women engineers. There were no women engineers that started working, and you can ask older people for support, and it was the older engineers view young engineers as competitors for the job. So it was not a good situation, but for me I was lucky, because the people that I dealt with at Dow, well, some of them were my former students, and we had that relationship that had, so they were just they came to ask for my advice, so they would listen. So and these people are senior engineers or superintendents in the plant. So and when I retired, they were all very, and I think to some extent I changed the culture in our department, because after I retired, most of the new hires that I was involved in the hiring process also for our department at the later part of my career. So and every year we plan for to hire 5 engineers, and most of those engineers that I had a hand in hiring were women, young women engineers, and minorities. Vietnamese, South Americans, and I even heard one Filipino engineer from California. She didn't stay, but 6 months. I think she wanted to go back to California, but she didn't stay. But by the time I left Dow Chemical, about a third of process engineers were women, and a good number were minorities. Yeah, I mean ethnic minorities. So.
It's so nice to hear that you were able to change the hiring practices so much during your time there. Did you act as a mentor to any of the engineers that you hired?
Oh yes, I did. I did. I not only did I mentor, but not only in the people that I hired, but at the engineers, young engineers, especially the Chinese and, and Vietnamese engineers who are in research organization. They would ask me to mentor them. And there was one, when I retired, one of those people that I hired actually wrote a very nice letter about how I would be good, not just a mentor, but I would be at the university setting, in the school, academic. I would be an advisor. I would be an excellent advisor because I would work for the mentorship. It's not just telling them what to do, but getting them to see how they can succeed in their profession.
What advice would you give younger generations of Asian Americans and specifically Filipino immigrants if they were interested in a career in chemical engineering?
First of all, one thing I would tell them is keep your heritage, be what you are, try to be comfortable with your heritage, with your skin. You're a Filipino or you're a minority, but seek to work hard, be initiative, and your bosses will notice, will see how the quality of your work is good. Just keep doing what you do, what you think is doing best, and keep learning. Keep learning on what. Don't just settle and say, "Hey, I'm already an engineer. I stop. This is what I'm doing." So keep learning as you go, because what you learn in school or what you've learned throughout your life is just your foundation. As you go through your career, as you work, you find opportunities to improvement.
Thank you so much. I have a couple of additional questions. I'd like to move into talking about your family and how you've interacted with your surrounding community. And after that, that will pretty much wrap us up. But first thing I wanted to ask was, how did you choose to teach your children about Filipino culture or language, and what kinds of Filipino experiences, was it important for you to make sure that they had?
Well, my children, they were at home. I raised them like it's run. Lucy and I run as a Filipino household. I mean, you know, everybody shares with the responsibility for getting the house in order, getting the food and all that. And so, and the children have chores. So, in fact, we had our house is 2 floors, so that the children's bedroom are upstairs, and we had a bell in the kitchen. And wake up in the morning, and Los and I would prepare breakfast, breakfast, and as soon as that breakfast ready, one of us would ring the bell. it's a bell, and and one of them is usually wants to sleep more, and so if they don't listen to the bell, we either yell and said, Mikey, come down. Tina, come down. Breakfast ready. Have to leave the house to make it frequent, but 7:30, because luckily for us, Lucy and I, we have the same schedule, because she works during the day, so we careful to only drive one car unless something is really needed to. And the kids would, after breakfast, we won't leave the house until the kids are out of the house and walking to the bus stop for the bus. So we ran the household. That's the, but we tried to teach them the Tagalog, because I'm from Iloilo, so from Iloilo, so we speak Ilonggo, and Lucy is from Bataan, and she speaks the Tagalog language. So the language at the house, when Lucy and I would speak to each other in Tagalog, but because although we try to teach them any of the languages, we were the only Filipino in the community, in the school district. So the only thing they can is, when they go to school, is look at each other and say if this is so they really have to they had a hard time in being bilingual, so to the point that they actually just had to drop the learning how to speak Tagalog. We would, on weekends, would get together with other Filipino families in the Mexican community in Lake Jackson, or special occasions would get together with them. But that was the only, we'd go up to Houston to visit Lucy's brother, but that was their only way of getting back with other Filipinos. But in school, they really didn't have. So thereby, the only way they can do is the English language.
How did you feel when your children decided to stop learning Tagalog? Was it upsetting?
No, it's it's really not a big problem with because sometimes, most of the time, I find myself too, even speaking to Lucy in Tagalog. It's because it's just easier to communicate in 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 English. Where so and and the community, our community too, is we're we're really in the community living with the Americans for quite it's I'm 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 proud that we're living in the community of live in West Colombia. Everybody who when I meet people and ask me where are you from, I always tell them I know when they're asking when they say where are you from, I know they want to know if I'm what part of the world I'm coming from. But I said I I tell them West Colombia, Texas. But I said, but if you want to know where I am from originally, I'm from the Philippines, and and, and when I go to Mexico, when I go to Europe, people would ask me, but people initially do say do speak to me in Japanese, but I said, but I when Lucy's with me, I tell them wrong country. And in some other parts of the world, when they see Lucy, Lucy is Chinese side, I said so. So everybody thinks most of people think she's Chinese. So I said no, 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 no. I am a Filipino. Even when I go to the Philippines, people still think I'm Japanese. Yeah.
You talked a little bit earlier about going to football games. What kinds of other American experiences did you have as a family?
Oh, we enjoyed soccer. I was also when our two boys were playing soccer. I was a coach, and also I was the president of the Brussels Sport soccer league in our area, and the girls, Gina and Tina, they played soccer also, but and we enjoyed going to the games too. And what we really enjoyed most, the band. They were both in all of them were in band. So, and in fact, Joe was the drum major for the school for a couple of years, and so we take them to San Antonio, we take them to Dallas for band, and also in church. We were Lucy and I were for 5 years that more than that, many years that the kids were high school age, other Catholic youth, CYO, we're in charge to be CYO for our church.
What kinds of values or life skills were important for you to teach your children? Values and life skills? Can you hear
Say
me?
that again, Nancy?
Sorry, what kinds of life skills and values was it important for you to make sure you passed on to your children?
First thing, our expectations from the children is that we the life skills is to be take our show our example, follow our example. This is who we are. This is how we grew up with, and this is what we're trying to impart to you. What you see with us, here's how we're brought up. So our expectation is that you would follow our lead, follow our example. That number one, God is important to us. That's number one priority. Prayers is who we are. Then treat people like you want to be treated. And our grandkids, when the grandkids were little, we had Lucy every summer. She had what we call Lola's summers, Lola's school. And that's how Lola and our biggest thing is BIP, behavior influence behavior. That's to the children and to the grandchildren. That's what we teach. So your behavior influence behavior to other people. And if it's anything that's worth it's worth doing, do it with all your efforts and with all your capabilities. So that's our legacy is that's all we can impart to them. We came here into this world with nothing, and the only thing we have is us, is our heritage, what our parents taught us, and that's trying to impart to them. So,
you mentioned earlier, and I just wanted to clarify. You said that your grandkids would go to Lola's school during the summer with your wife. Can you talk more about what happened there?
yeah, I don't know the picture now, but she would. We have the one of this table, or we have both seats on the side, and Lucy would give them what lesson for the day, whether it's behavior or singing or drawing or sketching and all of that, and then but mostly it's about the relationship with other kids. how, because Lucy was in, I don't know if you know, if Lucy had told you, she was, so she started in Lake Jackson, they had for kindergarten children, they had the training for safe training for the children during summertime. So, and Lucy was in charge of that. So, part of that is also part of the Lula School. And so,
Thank you for sharing that. That was really nice to hear. I'd like to talk now about you've mentioned that God is very important to you. I was wondering if you could tell me about any religious services that you attend and where you attend.
say it again.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Huh?
Can you hear me?
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're fading out.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me? I'm asking if you could talk to me a little bit about your church and the religious services that you attend.
Oh, you faded out again. Sorry.
Okay, how about now?
Okay, better.
Okay, I was wondering if you attend any religious services that you would like to talk about. You have mentioned how important God is to you, and I was also wondering if you could talk about why you choose to worship with any particular congregation or community.
Well, primarily, yeah. Oh, you know, I was born Catholic, and Lucy is too, and Lucy is too. So it's a continuation of our upbringing as a Catholic faith. There was no question that we would pursue being Catholics here in the US. In fact, I thought was for the first few years in College Station, we'd go to the, it's still Catholic church, but would look for Catholic church that would more reflect our the way we being Catholics in the Philippines. And then after we moved to here in West Colombia, we were involved in building a new church, a new Catholic church in West Colombia. So that became that became a focus for our church, and so the kids just followed us through, and our pastor was really very good about getting me involved and getting me involved in the church. So and that's mainly the main reason why we choose to remain Catholic. Yeah.
What kinds of church events do you go to? Do you have any like fun memories of doing service work for church that you'd like to share?
yeah, church service, church services like the Catholic Youth Organization, for example, with well, we have the so we were in charge of a Catholic organization with the what we call the teachers also for the for this church school religious education, what we call our religious education. And you know, we, as Catholics, we have special occasions for the type of the season, like Lent, for example, and celebration, Christmas celebration, and all of that.
I see on your the forms that you submitted, you're also a member of the Filipino Association Houston. Can you tell me a little bit about the work that that group does?
We well, you know, when we first lived in Houston in the early 70s, we were with there were about maybe 200 300 Filipinos in Houston. So we organized, and I think we were the one of the first Filipinos in Houston. So we organized this Filipino Association of Metropolitan Houston, but it really was just a means of getting together with all Filipinos, special occasions centered on weekends, and doing things together on weekends, and special occasions, like when the Philippine Independence Day, so we organized and all of this. But it's more of the, like I said, fraternal organization. It's nothing to do with politics or but since I left Houston and moved to West Columbia, I'm not really sure how what the group in Houston is doing now, and for us, it's there are ways of getting back to the community, like our Rotary clubs, and Rotary club membership to Rotary club, and other occasions where we get together with non Filipino friends. So, you know, we've lived in this in Columbia Lake since 1976. So it's, and that's the only home that we know right now. So although all the kids are scattered around Texas and Colorado. I have one daughter in Colorado, and then son in Austin, and, and Joe, the oldest boy, is in San Antonio. So but
Have you noticed any interesting differences in the experiences growing up between your children and your grandchildren?
yeah, it's one of our oldest grandchild. We have 8 grandchildren, 2 boys and 6 girls, and the oldest is a boy, and I think is 28, 27 years old, and he actually played football for Westlake in Austin when they lived there in Austin. But then he's in West Virginia. I mean, not in West Virginia, but in Norfolk, Virginia. He's in the Navy, and he's training to be a SEAL, the Navy SEAL, and the search and rescue team for the Navy. And the girls, we have an engineer. Fiona is a civil engineer. She went to RPI, and Maya is in Colorado, and she just graduated last year from Regis University as a nurse. And two more, like Gina said, Anya is there in Austin, and the other girl, Leah, is in Chicago, going to DePaul University for wants to be a lawyer. And our youngest boy right now, his son is 17 years old, and he's a senior in high school this year.
Thank you so much. I would like to wrap up with just one final question. What are your hopes for Asian American and Filipino American communities in the United States? What kind of hopes and dreams do you have for them? What are you hoping they will achieve?
Filipino Americans, our culture in the Philippines, just they grew up that children are to be seen and not heard. That's a common phrase in the Philippines. And my hope that the future generations of Filipinos will be more vocal, visible, and take on their role as an active participant of the community building. Give an active role, whatever you're doing, whatever they do. I know most of Filipinos don't want to call attention to themselves, but that's the only way, to me, that's the only way you can do it, instead of just you know, it's probably my fault that I just keep on working, and, and make, but you have to make it, you have to make it visible and make it stand for something. If you really believe in something like, like sex trafficking, for example, people trafficking, you have to get involved with things that you be passionate in what you do with you, for you and for the community, and for your Filipinos. Get your influence. So speak up. That's what I'm saying. And,
Thank you so much. I am going to wrap up here. Unless you have anything else that you would like for us to include in this, please jump in and let me know. But otherwise, I will go ahead and stop the recording.